Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
And nice and well, it's not too early. For Gloria, it's what, 8 p.m. Is that right?
Yeah, 8 p.m. of the past. You guys
So
are in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gloria, for joining us on a Thursday evening. But I suppose there's not much to do these days. All the clubs, all the bars, everything is shut. So
Yes.
Zoom seminars is what we're doing, and we're doing them well. So
Good.
today, for everyone who's here, we're going to do it slightly more interactive. We also have a smaller group today. So Gloria's going to give us an update about what she's been through. At one stage, it looked like after Emerging Leaders that she was probably going to have to live out the rest of her days in Australia because her original flight was cancelled. But she did manage to get home. And then I just want to open it up for any questions that you really have about anything, really. So we can make it more interactive today. And Gloria's happy to take any weird and wonderful questions on pretty much any topic you want, and hopefully she can give a good answer. So I'll hand it over to Gloria now, mute myself, and then Gloria, you just say when you're ready for questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Ron. Thank you guys, first of all, for everything that you did for me in Australia. Actually, I don't know if you can see, I had a little necklace that I bought, and it's like the little Australia map, because I will forever remember that Australia was like my Atlantis that kept me safe during this whole, craziness and crisis going on. Before I arrived there, coronavirus was something that my best friend who lived in China would talk to me about, like, oh my God, have you seen about this virus? But I felt it like so far away from something that I would leave, passing to the point where like I got tested for it, and it was a horrible test, and then being quarantined, waiting for the results in Melbourne, and then like all the conference getting canceled, and then like watching the world just shutting down little by little, and then you become, part of this, like in the middle of a hurricane that you never expected to be. And actually, I felt pretty safe being in Australia, and I want to thank everyone at Mannkel and also at IPA for keeping me safe and everything you guys did, because it was the first time in my life that I was so far away from everyone and anyone that I love and that I know, and I felt at home, and it was really nice. So after Melbourne, I went to Sydney. In Sydney, I gathered with a friend, Maria Marti. She runs the Ayn Rand Center for Latin America. She also had trouble going back to Argentina, so we spent some days there. And then I went to Manly Beach, which I actually loved. It was 1 week where I felt like a local, going in my bike, but also it was very sad because I started seeing the first, the first stores closing down, people, giving away food, and, like all the conversations everywhere you go, what was about this virus. And then I was there, waiting for anything to happen. I went to the supermarket. I, prepared myself with all this food. And then IPA got the news from Qantas that either I left on the 27th of March, or they wouldn't know when they could bring me back home. So I went on the 27th of March, to the airport, and it was quite sad. I was on the last flight from Australia to the United States, and I have to say that from all the airlines that I have flown, I think that Qantas is one of the most amazing one. One of the things that I love the most is the little video of the security explanation that they give you of like, buckle your seatbelt and wear the swimming vest, because it goes decade by decade telling the story of Qantas, which I thought, how cool, it's like they're so proud of like the little company and how they grew. And so it was very emotional. I actually wrote on the menu like, thank you Qantas for bringing me back home, in these difficult times. And then I arrived in LA, and 80% of the flights were canceled. Like everything you see was like Phoenix canceled, Miami canceled, Chicago canceled. And I was like, oh no, maybe my flight to Mexico is gonna be canceled, but it wasn't. And then I arrived home, and here I am. This is my home. Welcome, and thank you for being here. I'm ready for questions.
Let me unmute myself. I will take questions from everybody else, but maybe you can give us a quick update on what's going on in Mexico in terms of as the economy shut down, are they just as prohibitive as we are and they are in Europe?
Okay, so in Mexico was quite weird. We have a socialist president who actually hasn't touched the economy because I think he has a lot of big businessmen who have tell him, don't you dare. And actually, until 3 days ago, they took official measures. Before that, it was more like Mexicans being, aware and self-responsible of staying, social distancing and all of this. And then, the airport is open until, as far as I know, maybe day by day they will close. They will close down. But I think that Mexico is one of the last countries in taking real measures. Like a month ago, you can see a video of the Mexican president saying, coronavirus, we're gonna, hug it away. Just hug everybody. And he was kissing, adults, like really like grandmothers and grandfathers. And whenever someone offered him like, antibacterial gel, he would be like, no. So he went from that to, oh yeah, this is real. Now, my home country, Guatemala, which is the border of Mexico, completely different. So the president right now is a doctor, a medical doctor. And since, I would say, when I was in quarantine in Melbourne, so that was like March 11th, he closed the country down, all the borders, the airport, and now we have a curfew in Guatemala at 4 p.m. And we have more people in jail for violating that curfew than people, diagnosed with coronavirus. And now you cannot travel from city to city. So if you're in one city in Guatemala, you have to stay there. And some of the left-wing parties have tried to, go all Keynesian, like, price controls and subsidies and, printing money. But there's a lot of push and pull on those measures. Argentina is one of the ones that is having more difficulty with that. A lot of companies have gone on bankruptcy, and the measures that have been taken have been horrible for the economy.
Okay, thank you. And also in terms to help with questions from our students or staff, if you like, can you just do a quick recap of your areas of expertise, things that you love talking about?
Okay, I love talking about economic freedom, individual liberty. I can talk about Burning Man. I can talk about what's going on in Latin America, how to do the battle of ideas, how to communicate in social media, radio.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any questions? Can you unmute yourself? Because we've got a pretty reasonable crowd, so we might just be able to sort of do it a little bit more fluently rather than me having to read your text out in the group chat. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself. We can try that for a moment. But I suppose a question that I have is, has Burning Man been closed or cancelled?
Not yet. So we had, actually, I was going to give a talk on this Burning Man. I was quite excited about the libertarian principles of Burning Man. And in 1 month, maybe less, like 25 days, they're going to officially communicate if Burning Man is going to be canceled. So we're waiting. Okay.
Because lots of other big festivals have obviously been, when is it? September, August?
September.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I find it hard. Please write in the text in the group chat if you have a question. I'm sure you have questions you can ask any questions about.
Oh yeah, I can see it too. When you write, I can see it as well. Like Paris,
yes.
Israel.
Okay, so you be the moderator. You do my job, Gloria.
Okay.
Let's go, Paris.
Hi, Gloria. My question is just following on with that. I am not particularly familiar with Burning Man. Could you give me an overview of how that is a libertarian kind of festival?
Yeah, of course. So the first thing I would recommend you is to go and look for a video called 18 Things You Didn't Know About Burning Man with Miriam Isa, who was actually in Australia a year ago. She gives a really good explanation of what Burning Man is all about. The first time that I heard about Burning Man was in a Cato Institute debate or talk that was called The Libertarian Principles of Burning Man. And I got very interested in it because from those 10 principles, you have radical self-expression, which goes perfectly with libertarianism, but also radical self-reliance. The fact that you are responsible for yourself. You're in the desert. It's not a festival like the Ultra or Rock Werther or, you know, I don't know, Tomorrowland, where you only go, you know, and drink and hear music. No, this is like going to a different planet for 1 week. Like picture it like, you know, in Star Wars, when you go to like the weirdest planets, it's something like that. So it's a city that it's built voluntarily. Everything that you see there is absolutely voluntarily. And of course it is possible because there's a market out there where you can get all the goods and services that for 1 week are available in a gifting culture. So it's not bartering, it's more gifting. You are even responsible for your own trash, what we call MOOP, matter out of place. So I think that also goes very well with, you know, environmentalism and free market economics, like market solutions for pollution, where, you know, there's an issue of property with trash. That's why, you know, trash is everywhere, especially in third world countries, because there's no private property on it that makes everyone responsible for it. And another thing that I associate with libertarianism is, do you know the paradox of the diamond and the water? Like, how come diamonds are so expensive when they are not something that we need to survive, versus water, which is, you know, a vital liquid? And of course it is relative, right? Because if it's the last glass of water in a whole desert, its price is gonna go up compared to a diamond. The same thing happens in Burning Man. The only good that can be sold, and it is sold, is ice for $4 the bag. That's the only thing that it's sold. Why? Because of a scarcity, and keeping ice cold is one of the most expensive things. So those are like a little bit of the things that I find of why Burning Man represents a lot of libertarian culture. And of course, the fact that, yeah, during 1 week, there's gifting culture. But if there would come, you know, a disaster in the world, and then you cannot go out of Black Rock City, and we have to spend more time there, of course, that prices would start to come up, you know, as a normal response of humanity when there's a scarcity.
How many years have you been going to Burning Man?
I've been going 2 years, and if this year happens, it would be my third year.
Okay.
It's
grown quite, you know, from what when.
No, I was just gonna say that my camp is called the Land of Monkey. If you're interested in knowing more about it, that's the landofmonkey.org. You can read more about it.
Oh, you've got your own website.
Yeah, we do. Actually, like going to Burning Man is like applying to university, you know, to college. Like there are different camps, and you have to like write an essay or have an interview and say, what would you do when you're in the playa? Like, what can you provide to the community? Yeah.
I suppose not many people that go to Burning Man would probably consider themselves libertarian. So do you, when you go there, do you do like, I'm not gonna talk about Ayn Rand, and I'll just, you know, I'll keep that quiet.
You know, the funny thing is that in Burning Man, you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have internet. For 1 week, you are back in the 1990s, or, you know, the beginning of the 1990s, and you go everywhere with bike. And if you want to see someone, you leave a little note, and you're like, I'm going to be here from this hour to this hour. Maybe I'll see you. That's it. Like, you're absolutely disconnected from the world. So the first year that I went, I said to my friends, listen, I know that there are a lot of like progressives from San Francisco that go to this thing. I am not going to Burning Man to preach. Okay, like I'm just going to have fun. But by Wednesday, you get there on Saturday, right? So by Wednesday, a girl named Sarah, who now is like one of my biggest friends. She was like, all right, I cannot take it anymore. I need to ask, how the hell is that you're famous in like all over Latin America? What exactly is that you do? And then I was like, all right, yeah. So, you know, I'm a libertarian. Obviously, I hate the poor. I kill puppies in my free time. And I hate babies, right? And I don't care if there's no healthcare. And I don't care if there's education. So I think that one of the most effective strategies was just to like, you know, just put out the most ridiculous things that people already think we are. So you disarm them. And then like everybody started laughing. And then, you know, I started, you know, telling them a little bit of my experience and how corrupt governments in Latin America, you know, just make you think that we need limited governments. You know, I don't come from Sweden where everything apparently works. I come from freaking Guatemala. And with humor and, you know, talking about the paradox of the diamond and the water. And of course, I also told them, listen, yes, it's gifting culture, but there's private property. I cannot take Sarah's Coca-Cola and give it to, you know, Louis without her permission. I can only give away what is mine. And that's actual charity. So I started teaching them. By the second year, I launched this book, How to Talk to a Conservative. I don't know if you can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Here I'm dressed like Margaret Thatcher. And I have the other half that is called How to Talk to a Progressive. But when I came out with How to Talk to a Conservative, like everybody in my camp loved me, right? Because we're talking about like progressives from San Francisco. And they actually started respecting more of my job, to the point that now I was gonna give a talk at Burning Man about, you know, libertarianism and the principles.
Okay, I think Louella has a question.
Yeah, thanks Gloria again for speaking with us. What major like cultural differences did you find between like Australia and Mexico and Guatemala?
Wow, that's a really good question. I guess that I see a lot of difference when you have a past of common law and Anglo-Saxon mentality, where rationality, productiveness, and self-made people are more respected than the culture of victimhood, Catholicism that sees a little bit poverty as a virtue, you know, the Latino way of getting by the law. I could see, for example, on the first days of the coronavirus crisis, how people just respected what had to be done, you know, not like in Latin America where you had to like go on curfews and take the military out because people just don't listen. So I always see that difference between Anglo-Saxon common law mentality from everything that is the Commonwealth, the United States, versus the Latin American world more infected with the French Napoleonic law that is more dictatorial. Culturally, that makes difference. Now, regarding young people, I think there was more genuine interest in Latin America from an Australian audience than what Latin Americans ask about Australia. And that was quite surprising, not only in the seminars, but like everywhere I went on the days that I was not quarantined. If they were like, you have an accent, where are you from? And I'm like, Guatemala. Oh, Latin America. And people, you know, like engaging in asking questions. I really love your country. One of my favorite places in the world is London. I've only been there like for 4 days, but what I hated was the weather, because I lived in Belgium for 1 year and I really missed the sun. And when I got to Australia, it was like perfect. It was like Britain with good weather. Also, another thing that surprised me is how warm are Australians. Like you would think, because, you know, you're Anglo-Saxon and with British inheritance, but you guys are like pretty warm. And that reminds me of back home.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed your time, even though it was pretty quickly all sort of thrown up in the air and completely changed. Do you think that that has anyone in Latin America, if the governments are not really out there doing things very sort of proactively as they are here, have you seen any sort of price spikes in things that people might be buying a lot of, like with, you know, how now they're accused of price gouging and things like that? Is the Latin American market more responsive with prices?
There were some panic shopping going on, but quickly, like, people, you know, went out and say, listen, don't panic. So far, I haven't heard of a scarcity of anything except for alcohol, because right now we're in Easter and people get like super drunk. So for example, in Guatemala, they banned the sales of alcohol for this week. Obviously, people went out and bought everything, you know, they could. But aside from that, no, I wouldn't say that there's a scarcity so far, but there's a lot of bankruptcies, especially in countries like Argentina, where there have been a lot of Keynesian measures into place. Now, amazing things had happened. For example, in Guatemala, a guy went out and put an app that it's called Cambalache. Cambalache is Guatemalan slang for barter, for like trade with goods. So if you go on this app, and you know, got a lot of toilet paper, but now you don't have cooking oil, you go on this app and you say, okay, I trade 3 toilet papers for, you know, 1 bottle of cooking oil. And then, like, it's like an eBay, but with things. And that has helped a lot with, you know, regulating the market, especially in a moment where maybe some people don't have cash, but they have goods that they can trade.
Yeah, because that sounds pretty cool. Maybe we need to have something like that developed here soon, because the supermarkets are still looking, I mean, they're full with the fresh food and things like that, but every time I go, it's been coming, you know, the flour and the things that will last a long time are all empty. Toilet paper's certainly been out of stock. Ron sent a photo last week from his local suburb with like a line out the door, people waiting an hour before the supermarket opened to get the toilet paper, and people are very much against raising prices, and you know, they just ignore any economic, you know, econ 101 to maybe let the prices rise, so that, okay, it's going to be more expensive to get your toilet paper, but at least people won't really, hopefully, hoard it and just buy all of it. And when I go down to the supermarkets, sometimes it's still on sale, right? Like half price toilet paper, but there is none. And then so they've introduced rationing. You can only buy one packet per person, and now they're limiting the number of people that can be inside the supermarket at the same time. So we're seeing some Soviet scenes all over Australia. It's like you can only buy one pasta, one bag of toilet paper, one this, and a line out the door as well.
Right. And actually your country did something pretty great. Like what they did is like, okay, if you want to take 1 toilet paper, it's like, I don't know, 4 euros. You want to take a second one, it's going to be 100 euros.
Yeah,
some
Denmark did that.
supermarkets in Denmark did it.
To the main room. I hope that's.
Who's that? Oh, sorry. I think we okay. Yeah, they did that. And I don't think he got much flack for it, but that made people think, okay, how much hand sanitizer do I really need? Right.
And by the way, I talked today with 2 scientists who opened up our I don't know how you call this in English, like an artificial breather, I guess, like with the lungs, and you know, and they liberated for everybody, if you're a doctor or an engineer, to get the instructions on how to build one, and it was, you know, pretty much for Latin America. But anyhow, what they told me is the most effective thing, this is not a bacteria, it's a virus. So what kills it is soap and water, not actually antibacterial gel. It helps, but it's not that efficient.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some questions, so let's do Shane. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi Gloria. I was wondering if you had any criticisms or there was anything you disliked about Australia's government, Australia's economics, even the people, just anything that you didn't like, because it sounds all pretty good so far.
I didn't like the fact that there's a Guatemalan running the Communist Party of Australia and one of the most corrupted unions in Australia. And I tried to do some research of that guy. but then, you know, the whole crisis started and no one, like some people like send me some links, but yeah, I would apparently like the Venezuelan dictatorship is, you know, hosting him in Australia. As far as the Australian government, I didn't have time to interact with them, except for when I got my test of coronavirus, I guess. But by the rest of it, I didn't have any contact with it. What I did know is through an Argentinian that is living there, and he was doing the Argentinian Australian Chamber of Commerce, which, you know, also went to hell because now Argentinians have this horrible presidency. And he was telling me how interesting your system of local majors is, because they never have money in their pocket. They have to compete for different projects, and people who vote for them decide which projects are going to be financed. I didn't get, like, you know, the details of the system, but that sounds interesting.
Okay, and Alex?
Hi, Gloria.
Hi.
Question. So my first question was about your book. What would be the best way to access that? And was it inspired at all by Ann Coulter's How to Talk to a Liberal, or it's just a coincidence that the titles are similar?
So I have written 3 books. The first one is The Populist Deceit, Why Our Countries Get Ruined and How to Save Them. I co-wrote it with Axel Kaiser, a Chilean lawyer and economist. And it's basically a diagnosis of what I taught you guys in the seminar about, like, socialism of the 21st century, how it got there, you know, why the Latin American mentality towards this. When that was launched, the editorial, my publishing house, was like, listen, you're traveling all over Latin America. You're discussing with young Marxists. Why don't we do a book that recollects everything that you talk to with them, that you talk in social media, in your radio show, in your conferences, and what are the arguments that these people throw at you, and how do you counteract? And I think someone suggested, oh yeah, it's like How to Talk to a Liberal by Ann Coulter, except for the fact that Ann Coulter is like super conservative. And that's why I decided to write the second part, right? That is How to Talk to a Conservative, because I really want to be understood as the libertarian that I am, you know? And actually, like, this book, I dedicated it, if I may read, to all the libertarians, objectivists, and anarcho-capitalists that someday in their life have been called with insults like fascist, capitalist pig, Nazi, oligarch, or imperialist, but at the same time have been called cultural Marxist, disguised progressive, liber progressive, or socialist in the closet. Because this is what's going on in Latin America, you know, like, if you're a libertarian, you're gonna get attacked by the conservatives because you're not, like, you know, you defend individual liberties, and you also defend market economics. That's what inspired my books. Also because in Latin America, there's a lot of prostitution of character. Jose Marti, for instance, he was one of the founding fathers of Cuba, very much in the line of the founding fathers of the United States. He was taken by Fidel Castro completely, I don't know how you say in English, like tergiversar, like when you grab something and just twist it to the absolute contrary. And since people don't read history, you know, they take these heroes and they make them like their image. The same with Simón Bolívar, another super libertarian, and then, like, you know, Hugo Chavez took him. So it was important for me to leave something behind after I'm not in this world that states that I defended both liberties, especially because Latin America is, in mentality wise, there's not much acceptance of not having a religion, of wanting to legalize drugs, of, you know, defending sexual liberty, etc.
Thank you. I'll take Louella's question, or you will take Louella's question in a second, but I've just got one small question. What advice would you give someone like me who feels like, as the years go by, I might become more and more conservative as I get older? which horrifies me. I want to stay libertarian. Can you just remind me what's so good about being libertarian and not conservative?
What are the things that do you think make you be more conservative as years go by?
I don't know, like when Scott Morrison, our current premier, won the election, I was sort of happy. And even though I don't really agree with him, and you know, I find myself making more and more concessions in terms of, oh, maybe we shouldn't legalize all the drugs, maybe we should still, you know, some, you know, and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, give liberty a chance. I know that sounds like super hippie, but regulate liberty once it exists. You know what I mean? Like, let's get conservative once there's freedom out there. But being conservative when you're fighting the socialists, it's just like liberty doesn't get a chance. You know what I mean? But I do understand that there is a crisis going on in the developed world, and it's an emotional crisis. I talked about this in our seminar in Mannkel. It's like material wealth was promised as individual integral development, and it is not true. The fact that you have material wealth is not going to make you a good, ethical, complete, peaceful, happy human being. That's something that philosophy gives you, a sense of life. You know what I mean? And I think that consumerism has been mistaken as capitalism, which I don't think it is the case, and materialism. And I think we have to invest in markets, and hopefully with this coronavirus crisis, one of the markets that they say it's going to be promising is everything that has to do with self-care, like health, but also you know, healthy mind in a healthy body, integral individuals. I think that that's so much needed. I read this book by Jonathan Haidt, The Cuddling of the American Mind, how a generation is set to fail because, you know, the snowflake culture of everything offends me, so take it away from me. You know, I don't want to see pictures of the Holocaust, they disturb me. The fact of the matter is, if you don't confront people with suffering, they cannot be happy. Happiness is a state of mind or an emotion as a result of the reward of overcoming obstacles. So if you don't have obstacles, you don't have resilience, and you stay in the childhood mentality of victimhood. So now you have people from the developed world, England, Australia, Spain, coming to Africa and Latin America to, you know, like build a school, and they cannot take it. And they cannot take that people live in absolute poverty and they're more happy than they are in their super developed cities. So I think there's a possibility of an exchange of internal spiritual wealth, if you want to call it like that, that we have in the third world, because nothing works. So we're used to be happy with whatever we have. And you guys with the material wealth, you know, like that exchange, I think it's necessary.
Good point. Okay, Louella, ask your second question.
Awesome. So generally, like, economics is a male-dominated, like, industry. So how do you find your experience in it as a woman? And also for me personally, like, I'm aspiring to go into like the legal or the economic kind of profession as a woman. So like, what's your sort of advice?
First of all, look in Netflix for the movie The Female Brain. I think it's an excellent movie that explains with humor, but with science also, how our brains are wired differently. We are multitask, we are capable, and I think that this is why there was only one Ayn Rand versus all the economists. And she talked about an integral philosophy with art, with ethics, with politics, with economics, with epistemology and metaphysics. So let the big boys, you know, if you want to call it like that, go into the economic side of it. And we as girls, we can do more of the communication integral job. You know, we need everyone that we can possibly get in the battle of ideas. Liberty is something to be lived, not only to be preached from the statistics of economics. If it would be that easy, We could show a satellite picture of, the Korean peninsula and just say, you see, no electricity in North Korea, a lot of electricity in South Korea. Liberty works. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. In my experience, we need to work psychologically. We need to work with emotional intelligence. We need to work with people that have been taught to be afraid of being free. And I think we need more women doing the complementary job that the economics already has. It's like it's super overdiagnosed, the fact that economic liberty works. You have the indexes of economic freedom, you have tons of books, some of them I have here, that already set the case that yes, economic freedom works. But what about individuals who were psychologically taught to be afraid of being free? And I think that us women have a competitive advantage on that. So what I would recommend to you is, well, first watch The Female Brain. I think you're gonna enjoy it a lot. Read a lot of Ayn Rand. If you speak Spanish, follow people like Antonella Martí, Maria Blanco, who are doing a lot of the feminist libertarian battle, and it's very interesting. And also, okay, go into law, go into economics, but keep on adding more knowledge. If you like art, incorporate art. If you have an interest in neuroscience, go for it. If you have an interest in sexology, add it. We need to sell freedom as an integral package that goes beyond economics.
Thank you. On that note, I would like to say that Mannkel produces a lot of good research led by Andrew Pickford and Josh Adamson. And I am now calling, if anybody here would like to be the great communicator for all their excellent research, which just takes place in a white paper form with maybe a few diagrams. Maybe we need someone to get up there and explain what it's all about. So if any of you guys would like to be the spokesperson for their research, which is good, but sorry, Andrew. Let's do Tiffany.
Yes, hi, Gloria.
Hi.
My question was going back on coronavirus. I was wondering if you have a view of how the pandemic might change some people's political views or their mentality.
Do you mean a video that explains that?
Pardon?
Can you repeat your question? Because I didn't understand if you talked about a video.
No, how you think the pandemic will change different people's political views.
Well, I think that we need to do the battle of ideas. Right now, the only functioning country, it's the most libertarian country in the world, and that's the internet. And at least in the Latin American libertarian offer, everybody is turning to the libertarian leaders that we have, like Javier Milei, Axel Kaiser, Antonella Martí, Maria Blanco, like everybody that I know in all the countries of Latin America is constantly doing live streams about how to fight this. If we don't do this battle, now that we're quarantined and the world is hooked to the internet, definitely I think that we're gonna come out of this with more statism, more socialism. But this is why I'm doing, like, I haven't all day, I've been in different live streams. I'm with you guys, and then I was with a Chile live stream. I was with two scientists explaining this thing of the breather. And I was also in an Argentinian stream. Tomorrow I have one with Venezuela. So right now is the time to put the ideas out there. I've been using a story that it's for kids. I don't know if you know it, in Australia, The Ant and the Grasshopper. It's like a kid's story. Have you heard of it? I don't know, maybe?
No, I haven't heard of it.
So The Ant and the Grasshopper, like the animals, the insects. It's a super old story for kids, and it's about this ant, and she's preparing during the summer to, because the winter is coming, like in Game of Thrones, and the ant is like putting all the food out there, and the grasshopper is all the day playing the violin. and she laughs at the ant, like saying like, why are you like putting all this food away? You know, like just enjoy. The weather is beautiful. Come and dance with me, blah, blah, blah. And the ant is like, no, dude, like I need to get my stuff together. Like hard times are coming. And, you know, eventually winter comes, the grasshopper has nothing to eat, nothing. And she's struggling in the horrible weather. Whereas, you know, the ant is chilling in her little tree with her fire and her food and, you know, like reading books and whatever. And the grasshopper goes knocking like, can you please open the door and help me out? And of course, because this is a kid's story, the ant says, of course. In real life, human beings are not as smart as the ant. Actually, ants all over the world, knowingly that they are the ones that work and produce, are screaming to the grasshoppers to please, you know, take their money away and subsidize stuff and put control to the prices and all of these crazy things. So I think that every crisis of humanity, it's an opportunity to reinvent ourselves. And we only have two options. Either we go back to the road to serfdom and we, you know, go back 1 century, or we do the battle of ideas. We learned from what our previous libertarian influencers didn't do. What were the mistakes of Mises, of Hayek, of Rand, of Bastiat? Like, what are the things that they missed? How can we accommodate this to new times? And how can we win this battle?
Thank you. There's a question from Shu-Wei.
Yeah, hello. Hi, Gloria. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My question was, like, in terms of your experience of speaking, like, with people in Latin America and holding seminars and then coming to Australia, and also that, what, like, would you say that Australians are more receptive and open to the idea of libertarian philosophy and ideas? Like, is there a difference between how they understand and interpret what you say and what they think about it compared to people maybe in South America?
Well, I didn't have that much of experience to grasp because I only did 1 seminar in the Mannkel Institute. So obviously, you know that these are already people that are into the ideas of liberty. I was not exposed to like general audiences like I am here. Here I talk to everybody and anyone, like whoever invites me, I will go there. And of course the atmosphere changes. It's not the same to talk in a state Marxist university than talk to a group of businessmen, than to talk to, you know, like mothers or indigenous women in poverty. So I adapt my messages. Like I'm like a salesperson of ideas, but instead of like shoving the ideas out, I try to think, okay, how can I sell the idea of liberty to this person? What can psychologically or emotionally liberty do for this individual to make his life better? And I try to tackle it from that angle. So what I tried to do for Australia was shock them with the corruption of Latin America. You know, like I one of the messages in my super short experience that was very effective was talking like, yeah, okay, you are in the developed world. You don't see the bankruptcy because you just put it out in debt that, you know, your grandchildren are going to pay someday. Because everyone in the developed world knows that the welfare state is going to go to bankruptcy. You just don't want to face it. You just push the thing away. And of course, when you get sick and you go to the hospital, someone attends you. And if you go to a school, there's internet and there's books. In Latin America, you don't have that. Schools don't have electricity. They don't even have, you know, like tables and chairs. So it is evident that the government doesn't work. And I think that when I go to the developed world, where it be Europe or the United States or now Australia, when I like shock them with the rawness of Latin America, it's when like, whoa, they really wake up.
Thank you. Yeah, we're probably quite, nobody's really lived through that kind of, well, nobody would have lived through that kind of poverty in Australia and Europe, very well off in comparison to most of the world. This is probably the first thing, you know, the first sort of big crisis that our students will have gone through. So let's take the question from Alex.
Gloria. I'm not sure if
Hola, hi.
it's expertise, but I think it's a prominent issue right now, and it's been on my mind a lot lately, so I thought I'd ask anyways. I think all over the world we're seeing interest rates lower than they've ever been before. Like here it's only 0.25%. In a lot of countries it's negative. And then with the massive stimulus packages, obviously inflation is becoming a big issue. So I was wondering, where do you think is a safe place for libertarians to put their money? Should we be buying gold right now, or maybe short selling of options? What's kind of a safe bet?
I have no idea. You know, like I have this problem right now. Like I earn in pesos. Like I have several jobs, but my main job is, you know, here in Mexico. The peso has gone in inflation like 2 or 3 pesos in the last week. But then I'm like, okay, what do I do? Do I transfer it to quetzales, where they are doing all this also price controls? Do I transfer it to dollars? What do I do with my money, you know? What I did last year is I invested in land, in an apartment of Latin America, of Guatemala. But now, like, I'm waiting for it to be finished because, you know, the construction is not over yet. I think that I wouldn't put like we say in Spanish, don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Try to diversify. If you want to go on cryptocurrency, do it. If you can afford something that it's tangible, especially in the developed world where you're not gonna get expropriated, also do that. Take some cash, have it home, not everything in the bank, I guess. I'm not an expert on this, but the uncertainty is evident. And let's remind ourselves that it's like the snowball effect, right? The panic creates more panic.
Thank you. I was thinking, does everybody just needs to go completely off the grid and be self-sufficient? I know that's not very that's not very libertarian, but like at all the places that sell plants and stuff, like all vegetable seedlings are sold out, and people are planting their own gardens because they just think, you know. And I'm like, should I get a diesel generator so that I can just, you know, cut my electricity lines and not be reliant on anything? Because what if I can't pay my bills? Maybe I just have a diesel generator, power my house.
Solar panel. Get a solar panel. You have beautiful weather in Australia. That's a great idea. Actually, agriculture is one of the industries that is going to go on the rise. And especially like, you know, local agriculture. So beautiful. Why don't we have, you know, apartment buildings that get their own garden and people like can go there and get some food? I mean, I think that from this, we're going to get more market solutions for the environment. Also, another thing that I was thinking, actually visiting the beautiful parks that you have in Melbourne and in Sydney with all these beautiful trees, you know, these forest cemeteries where instead of, you know, you dying and coming from, you know, like they put you in this wooden casket, instead of that, they bury you in a way that you become a tree. So, you know, there you go, market solutions for pollution and the environment. And if every store is gonna go online, because, you know, a lot of places are gonna pass themselves to online, we're gonna have a lot of land in the city, you know, to do stuff that is more environmentally friendly, but private. It doesn't have to be from the government, you know?
Yeah, good point. Ron, I know that you had a question that you wanted to ask, so I'm going to unmute you and you can ask your question. Okay,
there's several things I'll comment on about what you've been saying, Gloria. One is I received an award some years ago for being ahead of my time and employing a lot of female geologists.
No, nice.
And they thought I was a bit avant-garde, being so forward-looking. And in receiving that award, I had to be honest. I said I just employed female geologists because they were better. And there was a reason for them being better, but because they were venturing into the into what was a male-dominated world, and
Right.
they knew that to be equal, they had to be better. And there was this tremendous self-motivating, they were driven to be better. They asked better questions, they were relentless in the pursuit of truth and following up things, and I benefited from that. So that was one thing. The other one, you were just talking about cemeteries and trees. My thesis at the Calgary School of Mines was on vertical burial, where I pointed out that it was so much more efficient to bury people vertically instead of horizontally, where you had to remove about 8 cubic meters of earth to put 1 cubic meter of coffin and then fill it up with 6 cubic meters. Instead, you could drill a hole and drop the people down, and it was so much more efficient, and it was even better. We even got a better than 100% efficiency by encasing the corpses in clear plastic so that we could leave their head and shoulders out of the earth. And that was really, they formed real headstones, and you could form little family groups, and you could set the expression of all the dead faces before you dipped them in plastic, just the way you wanted to remember them forever. Anyway, that was, and while we're on bizarre things, I see that you were a Beatles fan.
Yes,
Now,
I am.
do you know what group influenced the Beatles? The Beatles were sitting around playing the guitars, wondering what sort of sound they wanted to achieve. And then they heard an American group called the Everly Brothers,
Okay.
the Everly Brothers. And they were the mid-70s. The Beatles heard the Everly Brothers singing, and it just exploded in their mind, and it never left the Beatles, that first impression. And if you go back and through Spotify, track down some Everly Brothers songs and listen to them, it will absolutely fascinate you. You will hear the foundations of the Beatles' tight harmony. So that's
Thank you. Thank you for telling me that, because I was in Liverpool. I did the Beatles tour. I went to the museum. I read a lot of things about them. Never heard of that. I will definitely go and search that out. Thank you, Ron.
They were, Everly Brothers to the Beatles was like Hayek was to me.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. You should quote that.
Now, the other one is that we're busily, at Mannkel, we're giving a lot of thought to designing a plan of what we need to do to have a plan to get back into action once we've got to fight hard to regain those freedoms that have been taken away from us. We've lost momentum, and how do we regain momentum and the energy of freedom again? I know that Hayek was thinking very much about this toward the end of World War II, and he wrote the Serfdom book as a result of this. Was his thinking. We've got to work hard to regain our freedoms. We know that Erhard and Rotke out of Germany were doing the same thing. They knew that at the end of the war, irrespective of who won, they had to revitalise the thing, and they did a lot of huge amount of work. We're gathering all that information together, which is history, but we need a plan to step forward when we have the chance to revitalise it. And I guess the University of Marroquin is probably the repository of that sort of thinking for Latin America. Would that be correct?
I don't know if I understand the analogy of road to serfdom with Latin. I don't know. Could you rephrase the question?
Yep. Is there some thinking going on at the UFM University in Guatemala about forward planning? What we need to do, a plan for what we need to do when this veil of darkness is lifted, and we have the chance to say, hey, we got to get back to work. What do we do first?
Yeah, well, the UFM is actually doing a real life battle for every Keynesian policy that is being taken into place. UFM Market Trends is the section of UFM that goes directly to Latin American economics. UFM Market Trends. You can find that on their webpage, Facebook too. But if you just Google UFM Market Trends, and also all the information is in English, which that's good. But it's not only UFM. The Libertarian Party of Spain has developed a manifesto of all the things that the actual Spain government has done wrong and what they would have done instead, like public policy. Argentina is doing a fiscal revolution. They are calling all the ants to stop paying taxes to the grasshoppers. They're like just a general fiscal rebellion for the next 3 months. You have constant seminars of all the think tanks in Latin America, almost every day, doing seminars on price controls, subsidies, bankruptcy, personal budget, health and economy, because, you know, like they're trying to sell that health is more important than economy. And it's like, without economy, there's no health. So I've seen a lot of activity going on. And also in the Anglo-Saxon world, like John Stossel is producing a lot of material. Prager University as well. Yeah, Students for Liberty, they're also doing a lot of seminars.
Wonderful, wonderful. You've given us some good reference points there. Thanks, Gloria.
You're welcome.
Thank you. On the notion of price controls, we're doing something similar in Australia at the moment, where the Prime Minister has basically come out and said we're going to hibernate the economy for 6 months or something, is what he's saying, and that a lot of big commercial tenants, I think this is what it is, are not allowed to evict anyone while they can't pay rent. So effectively saying to private owners of land and buildings, like, you can't evict anyone even though they can't pay their bills.
Wow. Wow.
So I don't know how that's going to play out, but because all the shops are closing and not every shop might be able to move totally online, they're just saying, okay, so you basically freeze this shopping mall in time, and then in 6 months time we can just reopen and it will be the same. But I don't know how that's going to play out.
I think that what I would have pushed if I would be president is sit down with everyone that depends on you, and sit down with everyone that you depend on, and re-budget, but individually, like in a spontaneous order, because this mentality of one size fits all is leading to bankruptcies. Instead of saying like, okay, I have to pay rent, school, you know, medical bills, whatever. You put your budget, but then you think of all the things that in a normal economy you spend on that you're not spending right now, like going to the movies, going to concerts, using your car, whatever, and everything that you just don't, you know, normally spend on. And then you can figure out that, okay, if in normal times I live with $1,000 a month, maybe right now I can live with $400 a month. And maybe everyone that depends on me can also budget down. But what I would have pushed is sit down, take responsibility of your own bills, and let's just downsize the economy using the invisible hand, you know? It's like I pencil on the reverse. No politician I have seen suggesting this to their people, like none. And they just go to this one size fit all policy. And that's the thing, like the more the government does this freezing, the less room you have for everybody to decide by themselves.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, I'm going to take a question from Andrew Pickford, so I hope he's ready. Can you please write if you have a question, come up with some questions, because we've still got a bit of time to go, but otherwise I'm happy to end it a bit early and give Gloria her Thursday evening back. What are you doing, Andrew? That's a lot of noise. But so please write. I've got Herman, and anybody else get ready after Andrew.
Hi, Gloria. Just a quick question for you. In Latin America, and there is sort of always a bit of anti-American sentiment. Has that changed where you are? Has it been directed at the same sort of US being evil or being a problem and Trump, or is it a bit different now in the COVID era?
Mostly from the people that hate the gringos. There's two mentalities, you know. I actually shared a meme. Share your conspiracy theory that you love the most about COVID, and it goes from like, it's bat soup, it's the Chinese taking over the world, is the Americans taking over the world with the Chinese, it's God punishing us all because we're sinners, and you know, it's like all the the different. But in general, with the anti-American spirit that we have in Latin America, there's two things going on. First, laughing that Trump is not making the good decisions, you know, that 10 million jobs were lost. And it's like, oh, look, the gringos are hurt. That's one. And there's joy because of that. And the other one is, yes, a sense that this was some conspiracy in between the Americans and the Chinese to take all over the world.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I did want to just follow up on that. My partner has started believing that it is a conspiracy theory that China released the virus. All the businesses go bankrupt. Meanwhile, they just advance in the South China Sea and they come in and they buy all the businesses while the prices are low. Do you think that it's a conspiracy theory, or is this just an unfortunate accident?
I think that the Chinese are very crony businessmen than the Soviets were after Chernobyl. I don't think they were so smart as to design this whole thing. I do believe this is communism's fault because it was during the time of the Great Hunger. Yeah, there you go. I think it was in the time of the great genocide of Mao, where people learned to eat everything and anything, you know, from like human fetus to every single animal. And that culture has stayed, and that's the Wuhan market. And so, you know, bacteria, viruses, whatever can arise. I don't think that the Chinese design it. I think that once that it is here, the Chinese will be, as they always have been, you know, like doing plagiarism and violating individual liberties, and you know, getting people from the Falun Gong and taking their organs and selling them. You know, like these people are ruthless. They don't have any respect for human rights. And so, just like Chernobyl, they started lying and lying and lying and covering the information until a point where it's like, well, you know what? Shit hit the fan all over the world. We might as well make some money. And the Chinese are good on that. But I don't think it was a whole master plan. It's like they played it by the ear as the situation is unfolding. And the most horrible thing is the world is applauding it. You know, like how many Western media are saying, oh, look at the Chinese. They have it all under control. And I'm like, no kidding. It's like when people say that Cuba has excellent education and healthcare. And it's like, dude, you're getting your stats from a 60-year-old dictatorship that doesn't allow freedom of press. You know, it's the same here. And I would actually recommend you guys, if you don't know about this media outlet, China Uncensored in YouTube. Super cool what this guy is doing. I don't know if he's a libertarian, but definitely like he's in our corners. And he has a video called Authoritarianism is Not Gonna Kill Coronavirus, which he actually has rebaptized as the CCP coronavirus, you know, like tackling the Communist Party as a responsible for this whole thing.
Interesting. All right, we will take a last question, and I'll ask Ron as well after the question whether he has any closing comments, and then we will let our students get back to their study break. So Herman, I said it right.
Yeah, you did.
Are you there?
Hola, Gloria.
Yeah.
Hola.
I've noticed that there's a, can you guys see me? Yes.
What's that in your picture? Is that a kangaroo?
There's two kangaroos actually. Oh, my pictures.
That's so cool. I didn't get to see a kangaroo. I just saw one in the airport and I took
Oh,
a picture.
that's like 8 hours drive from here in Esperance, but it's fine. There's this massive rise in people idolizing Nayib Bukele, which you probably noticed, the president of Guatemala. And
El Salvador.
El Salvador, sorry, yeah, my bad. What do you think about everything that he's doing? He's basically just taking power, I feel, and just subsidized absolutely everything. What do you think is going to come out of that, and what does that present for the future of Central America and South American countries?
Well, it's funny because when he started with all these Keynesian, anti-economics policies, everybody was like, oh my God, look at Bukele. And it's like centennials discover Keynesianism, like when you don't read history, everything sounds like so innovative and new, which is not. It's just like the same Keynes as always. So what I did is I shared the rap of Hayek versus Keynes, which if you haven't seen, please watch on YouTube. Is hilarious and it's amazing. And there are two parts of it, the boom and the bust. And the other one is about the financial crisis of 2008. So Keynes versus Hayek in a rap. And also there's one of Mises versus Marx. So I started sharing that and I was like laughing, I was like, hey, Centennials, if you think that Bukele is so cool and these ideas are amazing, why don't you just go and put the new salaries, the new wages, 1 million per second? And I don't know, go and put the prices at 1 cent for every product, if your ideas are so amazing. And I started laughing about it. Everybody was, infatuated with Bukele. And like after 1 week, if you go to his fan page, he actually said, this is not working. Things are getting out of control. We made a huge mistake. I don't know what the fuck, I'm sorry for the word, but he basically said it. I don't know what the F to do, and may God bless us because this country is going to hell. But of course, as always in Latin America, when someone screws it up, no one hears the news. It's just a part of praising the guy. But then when he says, oh no, actually this didn't work, everybody keeps quiet and they don't share that news,
So what did he do? What did the president of El Salvador, did he raise everybody's wages and controlled the prices of products?
He froze the payments of internet, phone, gas, electricity, rents, schools, and we call it canasta básica, like the
basics.
Supposedly, yeah, the basic food that you have to eat, like, froze the prices. After 1 week, he was like, yeah, this is not working. People are going in bankruptcy and they are asking me for more subsidies and I don't know what to do because El Salvador is dollarized. So the guy cannot just print money every time he wants. So then he was like, in problems. Yeah.
What kind of educations do these people have that rise to the ranks of president? Would he have an economics background, or do they study these things?
I don't know about Bukele.
Was a bus driver.
A bus driver, okay.
He was a union leader.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you have everything. You have had Harvard educated Latin Americans that all their life lived in a bubble of wealth. And then when they go in power, they feel this, like rich guilt. And then they put socialist policies, which are a disaster. You have that. You have union leaders that were bus drivers. You have people who didn't know how to read and write until recently. Indigenous leaders with no, high school finished. The whole plethora. We're very democratic in that sense. Even killers. In Guatemala, we had a guy, Alfonso Portillo, Jesus Christ. He killed 2 Mexicans. And apparently in Mexico, after 10 years, if you're not found guilty, like the crime subscribes, I don't know how you say it, like it goes away, it expires. And so when he was interviewed in campaign, he was like, but President Portillo, you killed 1 Mexican. And he said, no, actually it was 2. And for Guatemala, it would be thousands. And people were like, yay. you know, yeah. Welcome to Latin America.
Oh my God. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Gloria. That's amazing. I'll unmute Ron if you want to have any final words.
I'd just like to thank everyone that's participating today, and in particular, thanks to Gloria for her comments and input. This whole situation of the interference with our lives caused by this coronavirus reminds me back in the mining days when you suddenly had floods and you had all these bright people that were normally producing, and you were prevented from even going out of the office. And
right.
And we used to have what we used to call workarounds. We used to work around that problem by doing the very best we could to keep the team together and to keep our momentum going, and that's what we're doing. And I think we mustn't let our standards drop. We mustn't lose our individual momentum. It's our lives that we're totally in charge of, and we've got to do the very best we can. And today is an example. Instead of saying we'll close the operation down until things get better, we're just doing the very best we can, and I think we did it well this morning. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you for always finishing with some, encouraging lesson from history that, reminds us that we're not unique. This has happened before, and we might as well learn from what works and what doesn't. And Eva, thank you very much, and everyone that has joined. Please send me the video so I can upload it also on my YouTube channel.
Will do. All right. Goodbye, everyone, and see you next week for Ross Cable Seminar. See you then.
Bye.